Let's take a look at how you can use Google BigQuery data with Tableau to visualize large amounts of data. Let me sign into Tableau online, where I've published a workbook about Google I/O. Now, Google I/O was a conference that happened in May of 2013, and the conference organizers put a number of sensor motes around the conference and took a lot of readings. And by looking at the data at this event, you can actually tell a story about the conference through the sensor data. For example, we can see that people were really in motion before the keynotes, got a little quieter during the keynotes, and then motion picked up again later in the conference. We can see that in the second and third days of the conference, temperatures were a lot higher than in the first day, and light would typically peak around midday, which is not unexpected. Wi-Fi, however, would peak at lunch. So if you've ever been at a conference trying to get on Wi-Fi at lunch, you know that the Wi-Fi network is often pretty busy right around then. And by looking at the sound readings from some mics at these sensors, you can actually see that sound peaked here on day 2 during the Billy Joel concert. Also not that unexpected if Billy Joel is playing. Let's look at this data in another way. Now we're going to look at sensor locations. In this dashboard, you can click through time and see different readings for temperature, motion, and humidity. I'm going to turn off showing the history. I'm actually going to go and look at different readings throughout the time of the conference. Here we're looking at one at 7 a.m. for humidity. You can actually see humidity by floor. We've got a motion timeline here that lets you click into any time during the conference. And I'm going to go and skip on to the third day of the conference, and you can see that later in the day, about midday, it was much more humid throughout the conference, especially on the first and the third floor. So this is another way to look at the data. That same data, all of the sensors that came through and were placed around the floor at the Google I/O conference. In fact, the sensors altogether generated about 17 million data points. So now let's look at how we can interact with this data. I'm going to go to another sheet. And this sheet provides a canvas for us to work with the data. I'm going to go ahead and click Edit. And what we are working in here now is Tableau Online. Tableau Online is actually connected up to Google BigQuery. And you can see my data here is the I/O sensor data we were just looking at. And in this particular view, what we see is the number of records, that is the number of readings over the conference. So you can see we actually have spikes at different points where we were taking more readings than at other times. But what we're really interested in here is the data. Tableau provides a drag and drop environment to query data like Google BigQuery. Here I'm going to take the data out and actually drop that on top of number of records and replace number of records with an average reading of all the data. Now this data is averaging light and mic and RF. That's not something we want to do. You would never want to average those different types of data. So we're going to come over here to the dimensions within the data, and in this data set we have all of the dimensions and measures available to us that exist within Google BigQuery. And the dimensions are things that you can think of like room and date, characteristics describing the data. Measures are the data itself. So we've already worked with the data field. Now we're going to take the the dimension sensor type, and we're just going to drag that onto the filter shelf. Now what that does is it gives us a quick filter, letting us choose the type of sensor. And the first thing I'm going to do is change the type of this filter to a single value list. Again, you would never want to average two different kinds of filters, so we really want to see just one kind of sensor data at a time. So here we're looking at altitude throughout the time of the conference. I'm going to go ahead and click into sound or mic throughout the conference. And now you can see that peak that we observed before at the Billy Joel conference. Now the other thing I'm going to do is add another measure into this data. It's interesting to see what the actual readings were, but I'm also interested in how many readings there were. So I'm going to take number of records, which tells me the number of readings, and I'm going to drop that onto the size shelf here. And now you can see I've got a heavier line where we've got more readings. And again, I can click into my quick filters and see different measures of sensor data throughout the conference. So here we're looking at the wireless data, or that RF data that we saw earlier. And it looks like we had more readings in the second and third day of the conference than in the first. Now, one of the very useful things that you can do with data is actually to shift perspectives of the data. So not just to look at your line chart as a line chart. Tableau makes that very simple with the Show Me feature. Show Me looks at what data is in your view and suggests different ways to look at that data. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose a bar chart. Tableau has suggested that based on the data in the view. And now I have a bar chart looking at data and number of records. Those same measures that we had in the view before. I'm still in a drag and drop environment, so I can drag number of records onto color here. And I can actually color my bars by the places where I had more readings. I can see that I had a lot of readings here at this particular time. And I could always back up. There's a handy back button inside Tableau. You can always back out of any operation that you do. Now, Show Me will suggest a lot of different data types. I can do a simple crosstab. Here I don't happen to have geographic data, but if I did, Show Me would suggest a map. We can even do a dual axis. So let's take a look at all those different kinds of views. And again, by doing this, what I'm doing is I'm exploring and interacting with my data and thereby understanding it and seeing what kind of trends I have. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our line graph that we had earlier. And let me drag number of records onto size again. And we'll get back to the place we were before. So this is only a basic demo, but with Tableau connected up to Google BiqQuery in an environment like Tableau Online, you can simply interact with your data in a visual and direct way right in a web browser or on a tablet.